attempted translation. So I read some of the shorter pieces, and when I came across Scherzo, I was completely stricken with how timeless it was. I felt like it was happening now. I could totally envision all my modern day politicians and people in the story. And it was nice and short, so I said, this is where I'll begin. I continued my online research and to see, well, if my grandfather isn't being translated, and he was so highly regarded, which Colombian authors are being translated, if any? And that's where I found that one independent monologue, a very short Colombian piece by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, written for the theater, had been translated by Gwendolyn McKeith, I believe, a member of Asylum. So I was able to find that online, and I was very encouraged by that. And I said, well, let me get in contact with these folks. So I sent an email, and my dear friend, Catherine Boyle, the founding director of Out of the Wings, responded very quickly, and well, I'll just pass it to Catherine at this point for her to tell you how her Scherzo story began. Catherine, thank you for joining us from London.
It's so lovely to join you, and thanks for having me there. I've been saying to people, I'm doing a talk back tonight in Las Vegas, and people just completely lost it with the endless lockdowns and everything in this country. So, and I really hope the Scherzo went well tonight. I'm sure it did. The story goes on because since about, well, for more than 10 years, I've been running a theatre project called Out of the Wings. And Out of the Wings is a way of bringing, it's a project that's about bringing together people interested in translating theatre, largely from the Spanish-speaking world and also from the Portuguese-speaking world. And it was really in a different way from what Gigi's just told you. The idea was to get this theatre, which nobody knows, into the English-speaking world and onto our stages, not as many different types of stages as we possibly can. And it started off as an academic research project, and an academic as well as a translation. And about 2015, in order to bring together as many people as possible who were working in the translation of Spanish theatre, we started getting together once a month to read a play in translation. And we've done that every month, last Friday of every month since January 2015. So we have a huge corpus now of plays. And people are getting in touch all the time, sharing plays with us. When Gigi got in touch, it was really quite wonderful because it proved what a project like this could do, which in many ways is very, very modest. It's a huge ambition, but it's very modest. And it was just very, very exciting to have somebody from Las Vegas, which for us is something really exotic. Might not you living there, but an email pops into your inbox, and you think, oh, forget everything else, I'll read this one. And it was Gigi introducing me and then the Out of the Wings Collective to the work of Rafael and Asylum. At that point, we weren't so adept, were we, Gigi, at the whole online meeting thing. So we invited Gigi to join us by Skype to our meetings, which we were holding in person and we now hold online, of course. And we read SCHERZO. And it was pretty wonderful because we hadn't read a play like that before, a short play that feels very metaphorical, that you can read in different ways, and it seems in some ways to be non-realistic, non-naturalistic, but at the same time is. And I remember some people were in the group being slightly skeptical about the play when they read it, but that before we actually read it. But then when we actually read it in the room, something pretty magical happened. And every time we've read it since then, a different type of magical thing happens. We read it, was it last month? When we read it,
yes.
Sarah was there with actors from Las Vegas and the group. And yeah, it was really magical. We found something different in it, because like all wonderful plays and all wonderful translations, they come alive in different ways every time we read, and every time we revive, and every time we act it. I mean, I want to say a couple more things and then come back to you, Gigi. I was thinking about what it is in me that's, that's always there when I read it, although it's changing. And, well, there's been lots of happening politically in Britain today, which you won't know about, but I'm sure you'll get that sooner or later. Anyway, and one of the things that's really crucial to me is questions of accountability that are in the play, but also questions of humility and sort of real humanity. I constantly come back to the question of power and power structures. There's the question of statues and monuments, but it's not done in any sort of crude way. It's done in an incredibly thoughtful, almost esoteric way, but one that takes you back to something that's very rooted in our daily experience in the West, I think. I was fascinated by the story that Gigi told us about her connection with her grandfather, who shamefully his work I didn't know, but have come to know and to love. And I was also fascinated by the fact that Rafael Guizado was a great dramatist for the radio, and I was really intrigued by how plays that were written for the radio translate into the stage. There's so much in this 20-25 minute play that's just erupted across our two continents, across the Atlantic, and I'm so delighted that you've performed it today. So I'll be quiet now, so that's just my next step in the journey that we've done with SCHERZO.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much. So I'd love to hear from you all. Do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to discuss about the play? Yes?
Well, I have a comment. I'm struck by how no one was a villain. That the statue, the government person, obviously fell short of accomplishing what they were supposed to or promised to do, and yet I didn't feel that he was villainous or evil or anything like that, which taking the timeless nature of that, that's a lovely thought, because that's not necessarily so anymore. I like that portion.
I'm not sure if you're able to hear, Catherine. We've had a comment from the audience. She found it interesting, and that there's no villains in the play. That there is some good to be found in the man as well. I hope I paraphrased you appropriately.
I wanted to add, Gigi, our Earth is here. We have to thank Bree McCallum for playing Earth. And Bree and I talked about, Bree had this fantastic insight that because she is Earth, he's one of her children too. And she's coming to him with love.
And you got that.
And that approach to this whole, a lot of the challenges that are brought up in the play, that's something that changes when it comes into contact with the actors, is that you feel just the love in every situation among the lovers and, of course, the farmers, but from the earth itself toward the man, that makes the ending feel hopeful in a way.
Our actress, Bree McCallum, who played the Earth, brought some insight to the play, that she felt that as Earth, the man was one of her children, and that she she did have love for him. Certainly she admonishes him and helps him see the light, but ultimately she loves him, and so that helps bring a hopefulness to the play that maybe you don't see on the page until it's brought to life by the actors. Thank you, Bree, for your beautiful performance.
I think both of those comments are really interesting. The comment that there's no villains, because you could, in a very simplistic way, see the statue of the politician, not as a villain, but as this character that we could rebuke in some way. But I think in relation to the Herbs, we see this person as another flawed human being. And I think one of the powerful things of the play, thinking about it now, and with the Earth as the mother, is this continued learning after death, which is, well, you can make all sorts of things out about it, but it's also what we leave behind in terms of how their being in the world carries on or not. And I think the Earth, the way that the Earth draws out from the statue, from the politician, this possibility, continued possibility of change is one of the things that makes this play very powerful.
Yes.
The dialogue is definitely timeless, and really enjoyed that those places of reflection that we have in the past as well as now in regards to everything that we're going through. And so it was beautiful in that way to have so many people reflecting wherever they were at in their life.
Yes, and there are some lines, you remind me of lines in the play that I had quite a challenge to understand and translate, the metaphor of the reflection. He has a speech where he talks about he had to govern with 100 heads and see through 1,000 eyes and govern with 1,000 hands, and all these, everyone was projecting on him and reflecting their own, what they wanted to see, and how his reflection grew. So yeah, there's a lot about reflection in the play, in the words, and in the story. And, I agree with you. It's lovely, and I'm thrilled to bring this play to you at this time, because in our nation and around the world, there's so much reflection going on. It just feels like it's the right time or particularly poignant time to do so, that we have a need to come together, and we have a need to kind of air out these things that we've all lived through, and happy to, with the help of many partners, be able to provide that through this story, which helps us do so in a I think, a poetic way rather than a harsh way. We've had a lot of harshness, and yes.
I just wanted to say that I was very impressed with the staging of this play, because I really didn't know very much about what I was going to see when I got here. Because of the title and the setting, I thought I was going to see a much more strident play. But with Asylum Theater taking and opening up the whole presentation with the chamber listen and try to figure it out.
Thank you. And I agree. I couldn't be more thrilled with Nevada Chamber Orchestra's performance of the quartet. Just absolutely glorious. An excellent way to set the mood. That was a stroke of genius from Sarah, and very thankful for it.
I have to say, I love that you picked up on the ears being awake, because that was actually very much on purpose. And it's very rare for a director to hear someone in the audience say it worked. So thank you. Because I wanted there to be, we want to tell all the story of this story, and the story of this play begins with the radio. And I love the narration and how we could treat it like it's painting a verbal picture. And because the story of Scherzo is about the translation, the language, all of that, it was great to sort of wake the ears up and the sort of senses with the music so that we could hear that fantastic first passage, which Joy Domain read, who's also in the audience with us, yes. But it's, I just love that there's this way to focus on the words first, since we are here talking about translation.
We have another question or comment, and I'd also like to mention that we do have our cast in the audience. If anyone has any, would like to hear from them at all, please feel free.
I was just really interested by the device of the statue. I'm not sure that I've seen that before.
The device of the statue.
In other words, that was the central character who was, in quotation marks, not really animated, but actually animated everything around him. And I'm just saying, I'm not sure that I've seen something like that before.
It was very challenging in trying to envision this. How would we stage this? Right, he doesn't move. Is that going to be interesting to watch? My hats off doesn't express it enough, but I have tremendous thanks and gratitude and admiration for Timothy Cummings for playing the role of only his facial expressions and his voice to tell that, to play an entire character. I did research, and I'm sorry I haven't reviewed that research in a couple of years, but I did look into plays about statues, and there are some that exist, not recently. Oh, goodness. I'm not sure if it was another Spanish language play or not, but there was a play a very, very long time ago that had a statue as the lead character. I'll have to look it up, and maybe I'll post about it on social media. I don't know how else to get the information to you. Thank you.
Well, I just want to congratulate you and the actors.
Yes, yeah.
Because they did a great job. You are amazing. The way you guys set up the stage, the illuminations, the whole thing, it really draws you in. It puts you in place. It helps you reflect in a time when we do need to reflect about nature, for sure.
Yeah.
And about how people with the best intention doesn't always get to do what they want to do. What you said about the 1,000 boys, the 1,000 eyes, all that.
Yeah.
It sometimes I wonder, and I feel for politicians, because they perhaps go there with a good intention, but what they end up doing is not necessarily what they want to do, but what the community or what the world is demanding of them. So the play in itself brings you down into you mentioned it, very human place where you say, yeah, we mess up, but we can still try to, to keep on going. I don't know. Very well done. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Irma, for allowing us to be here at the Winchester Cultural Winchester Londero Cultural Center. It's a beautiful, beautiful theater, and we are just absolutely delighted to work here with you and your staff and the community. It's been a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I just have to say, I expressed to you earlier, but I want to share with everyone that my grandfather, a number of his plays are set in parks. That's kind of his favorite poetic setting to talk about human nature and nature as well. And it's just been an absolute delight to come here night after night and walk through a park in order to enter a theater where we then do a play that's set in a park.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions? Yes.
First of all, I just wanted to say, I like at the beginning when the narrator was describing a bit how there's the character of Earth, and she's also the setting of the whole thing. And I like that, I guess, juxtaposition would be the right word, the difference at least between the statue who is hardened, still, grayish, seeing this solid color, and the Earth who is moving everywhere, talking, having the wind go, a multitude of colors everywhere. It's just one of the comments, lovely to see all that great costuming.
I agree, it is, and I don't know if you could hear that, Catherine.
I couldn't hear that very well.
Okay, great. I must thank publicly Ruben Bermel for his
Oh, yes.
exquisite costume. And also Axis de Brent, I hope I'm saying that right, of Axis Lighting, for the lighting. Oh my goodness. That's amazing. I have been blessed through and through with just everyone who has had a hand in this, bringing this story to life, from Catherine, from our very first contact, where she was kind enough to respond to my email, let alone read the play and invite me to Skype in and join her group, to everyone who was involved with the very first staged reading that we had here in Las Vegas. That was just a fraction of this play. We had, what you saw today was almost 22 minutes long. Lynn Eldridge, who directed that staged reading, is here in the house today. And when she did it, we were on a bill that was 10-minute plays. And I asked them, could we please stretch it just a little bit longer? We said, we'll give you 12 minutes and not a minute more. So I had to cut a lot of things. I mean, if it didn't help move the story forward, it was out. But at least we got to put it on its feet, experiment with it, hear how it sounded. So I want to certainly acknowledge that cast. Timothy Burris played the man in that cast. Natalie Senecal played the Earth. Anyway, it's taken many, 1,000 eyes, 100 heads, 1,000 hands to get to where we are today, and I want to thank every one of them.
Yes.
Gigi,
Yes.
will we see the whole play someday?
Oh, thank you. Okay, two things before I let you go. One is that this will be streamed, this performance will be streamed from the Winchester Dondero Cultural Center's Facebook page on June 29th. So if you would like to see it again, or if there's anyone who you think you would like to share it with, they can see it on the Facebook page that day. Second, I did translate, and so after we had our initial workshop in London via Skype, I took what I learned from all those translators. I went back and I translated SCHERZO, and I struggled with the fact that it's only 20 minutes long. Who would ever stage it? It's not long enough.
Some crazy woman.
So, but I also remembered that a number of other one-acts that I had researched and read and found charming also had these names with musical titles. Right? SCHERZO is a type of, it's a type of classical music. And there's another one called Allegro, and there's another one called Sonata at the beach. And there's another one that's a lullaby. And so what I did is I adapted those. Each of them are short. And I adapted the whole thing into a full-length play that I call Symphony for 6 Actors. And much like, so I arranged the Sonata and the Allegro and the Scherzo and the Nocturne, I called it, in a sequence like a symphony would go. And the stories have recurring themes in them, just like a symphony, symphonic music has recurring musical themes and motifs that weave through it. might like to include it and give it a staged reading, and sure enough they did. I was totally blessed with that. So I traveled to London for that, and so they've also had a staged reading of Scherzo in that context, in the context of the full play. So yes, Irma, thank you for asking. Sarah and I are in talks
Yes.
to bring you the entire symphony for 6 actors in the future.
Just to add to your plea, Gigi, that it would be lovely to see symphony for 6 actors happening in Las Vegas. It was a really lovely experience to do the reading here in London. And I think as I've been listening, just a short reflection, I love theatre translation, and one of the reasons I love it is that it keeps growing from, obviously from the page, and then from the single translator working with the words on the page, and then reaching out to whatever way it is, through email, online, across different media. But then the play keeps taking different lives, as I said before, and it's been really interesting. I haven't been able to hear everything you said, but it's been interesting hearing you, because the comment on the use of reflection in the play, I hadn't noticed that before. And so I'll come back and think, because we worked, we talked about translation, we talked about the ideas, and I think that's it. I think one translation and doing this sort of reading and performance, and then building it, just keeps it alive in the most beautiful way. And I think one of the things very special I've come really to appreciate about Guizado's writing, you were talking before about the poetry and the lyricism, is precisely what people were saying before. It's not out to make very sort of coarse almost comments on difficult political situations. It's there to take us into them in very humble and human ways, and to show us our way through them, through language, and through how we draw the lines through our own existence and our connections with others. And I think that's what makes them plays that actually live on and still speak to people, obviously, from the reaction you've had from the audience. So well done to you, Gigi, to all the cast. I can't wait to see it online, although I'm not on Facebook, so you have to send me. But congratulations to everyone, and what a wonderful thing that theatre has taken the play on, done the reading, and with music.
Thank you.
I'm so pleased.
And thank you for suggesting this as well, Catherine. I must mention that I was about to do a production of Complemento, which I'm sure I eventually will. Catherine said, I keep thinking about Scherzo. I'd love to see Scherzo. Can we do Scherzo? So here we are. Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming today. It's been an absolute delight to share this piece with you, and to chat with you, and to work with you. And I hope that we can all meet up to do something similar again soon.
Yes.
Thank you, Catherine. Bye-bye.